right, you want to roll into it?
Do it.
Yeah. So what do you mean you're getting in your, like you're starting to realize it doesn't matter?
I don't know, man. I felt like, especially in the consulting world, there's just such an image of a consultant online, I guess. But I'm just going to provide value to people the way I know how, the best I can.
What is it? What image are you talking about? What are you seeing out there?
That crummy, it's so cheesy, The whole consulting coaching industry is pretty crappy. I don't even like telling people that I'm a coach or a consultant because I don't feel like that's really what I do. But essentially, I guess it is,
You got any examples? Like, we don't have to call anybody out, but I'm not going to name anybody. Not names, but it's like, what do you, when you see all right, so when people see.
Super bro, hey, come look at me and what I'm doing and my money and cars and all this stuff, Yeah. They're selling the lifestyle, which I get. It's not the lifestyle I want to sell.
Like tailored suits, but like the suit pants are above their ankles, but the suit's like kind of a purplish suit.
That's fair. Yeah. I've got some friends like that, and I love them. They're great, so I can't say too much. But it's just that they're selling like this glamorous lifestyle that most of them don't actually live behind closed doors.
Isn't that, dude, I feel like if I were to try to do that, my brain would explode.
I'd have massive imposter syndrome. Like I couldn't deal with that.
It's even bad enough when you're not doing that stuff and you're doing the right thing, you still feel like
it.
Yeah. You still feel like an imposter all the time.
For sure.
That was one of the weirdest parts when I was doing the business podcast stuff is like I had people like, dude, you're killing it. Like this is sick. And behind the scenes, I'm like, man, I can't figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
And it is a weird dynamic. It's like you have your outward facing stuff where people are like, oh, you're killing it. And then you're over here like, man, what am I doing?
It's funny. Like I think that people see professional content posted and they immediately are like, oh, wow. We're just figuring it out though.
Yeah. Dude. And I think that was actually one of the things I did a not good job of selling with what I was doing is like there is a certain aspect of when somebody gets on like a platform like with cameras like this and microphones and stuff and it's good quality. Like when I was doing that, I don't think I told the value of what it was because people like see that and they're like, yo, that guy must be an expert. Like somebody's interviewing them.
Immediately think they're an expert in the craft that they have.
But the cool thing about doing that was that I got to talk to a bunch of like actual business owners and experts.
For sure.
Like if I wasn't doing that podcast, like you and I wouldn't have had that conversation.
For sure.
And I wouldn't have gotten to like see all the breakdowns of cash flow and all these different types of things. Like when you're planning out, okay, you just got a deposit and now you have to plan out like take that, put that in these accounts. Like that's not your money yet. You haven't done the expenses. Like getting to have that as a platform for me at least was like pretty cool because it opened up new doors that I never would have had.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm most interested, like why Joe Rogan, like those types of guys are so like appealing is because of how curious he really is. Like that's what makes him obviously good at what he does. But yeah, man, it's pretty cool to, I would imagine sitting in your seat hosting a podcast, learning from a lot of different people and points of views.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I viewed it as like an MBA. Mm-hmm. So like the amount of money that I spent to try to make it happen and everything, and I guess I probably made more money than it would have cost like overall for an MBA, something like that. But I view it as like, it was a full year of like straight learning, meeting all these people, getting this feedback, trying to make a business work, seeing what it's like to hire somebody, to manage teams, to outsource projects, to get shitty work back and try to figure out what the hell to do with it. Yeah. And, but also realizing like, hey, there's a sales machine, then there's an operations machine. And when you're doing both, you can crank up that sales machine. But once you get all that stuff in the door, now you're in full operations mode. And then that machine is slowly dwindling. That car doesn't have gas. Yeah. And it was tough. And I don't know. It's looking back on it, I was like real scared to let it go because I was like, everybody's going to think I'm a failure or this and that. But I don't know. It was crazy. Once I once I started telling people like, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore, like I'm searching for jobs and stuff, everybody was like, oh man, that's okay. Like my first business, I didn't do this until, 8 years in or 5 years in.
Bro, I feel like I just hit my stride in business like 12, 18 months ago. Like
really?
Just now. Again, I've been doing it for about 4 years now, but like really understanding what I do. It was funny when I went to do this, I had one of my old bosses, the one that I left, come and like, leave and go consult. He's like, you're not even going to know what you do for 3 years. Like, you're not going to have a clue, and really niche out what you actually do and how you do it and understanding your own business model. And I was like, man, screw you. I was so angry. I didn't say that. I was super humble in person, but behind closed doors, I was like, man, that it just always pissed me off really bad. I'm like, I'm going to go show him, And
then you showed him.
Yeah. Well, he was right.
You showed him he was right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you mean by it took like 3 or 4 years to really figure out what the business is?
Yeah, it's figuring out how you add value, because at the end of the day, what a business is something that adds value to somebody else, right? And there's only 2 ways. Alex Hormozy talks about this all the time. It's like there's 2 ways you can build a business, and only 2. You either get more clients or you make those clients worth more money, right? And the only way you can make them worth more money. And the problem, if you can't make them worth more money, you have to constantly get more clients to even stay flatline without even growing, right? And so to make a client worth more, you have to add more value for a longer period of time. And I didn't really know how to do that up front. And the reason I jumped into consulting was because originally I've been an operations or a finance manager for a lot of companies over the years as an employee.
Okay.
Previously to doing this. And about 6 to 12 months in, as an employee, that relationship changes. You're no longer the new guy that has all the ideas anymore. Your value drops drastically, and the ability to influence the company drastically decreases because your relationship with the owner decreases and they look at you more like an employee.
Okay.
And so, like,
versus like
a consultant,
okay,
right, that is charging way less but providing an insane amount of value, And so if you're a high paid employee, an operations manager making 80 to 120 grand a year, or a finance manager, whatever it is, when you first come on, they have so much hope for you as that new employee, right? And they're like, oh, this is going to be so good. He's going to come in and change my business. Our finances are going to look better. Our operations are going to look incredible. And you do make changes, and you do see the company increase drastically in a short period of time. And I watched that happen with like quite a few companies that I worked with in, 12 to 24 months. But then the company owners get a little bit stagnant, or they're like, we're good here. We don't really need you anymore. You can't influence the company the same way you did. We saw your bag of tricks is used up. Everything that you do, we've learned it. We understand it now.
Sure.
Sure. So your value decreases in their eyes, and they stop listening as much, and your influence in the business decreases to a degree. Now, I'm not saying that's always the case. It depends on who the leader is, if they're very forward focused and they want to continue growing or not, and who you are.
But this has happened to you.
Yeah, it's happened to me quite a few times. Some previous companies that I've worked for, and they're either the business owner got comfortable and they're like, hey, we're good right here financially. I don't really want more problems, because the only way to increase revenue or increase and build a business is to increase the size of your problems. That's not fun.
Yeah.
People don't like doing that, And so it's like, when I get to that next point, we can either stay here or we can face a whole new set of problems. They might be similar, but we have to go back to the drawing board again and break systems and grow again and learn maybe the same things in a deeper way. And they don't want to,
So what do you, all right, a couple things. Like I went through that process a couple times, starting something on my own. Was I actually initially thought of it in the way of like, how can I make a job for myself? And I didn't realize I was thinking of it that way at the time, but ultimately that's really where I landed, was like almost thinking of the business from a perspective of like, how do I make things as easy as possible? So
to make X amount of dollars.
Exactly. Yeah. And in hindsight, I look back, I'm like, that's like literally the dumbest way of approaching it, but it's
the way everybody approaches a business.
It doesn't make it not dumb.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you start working with people, like how do you figure out if that's going to be where people land. Like, hey, after this honeymoon phase of 18, 24 months, like, am I just going to be sitting here and then we're done? Or are these guys going to evolve? Or you literally don't know?
You don't know.
Okay.
You just don't know.
Because everybody can kind of sell you like, we're going to go to the moon.
Our goal is X, right? It's $100 million or whatever it is. I've heard that by so many. I mean, I have vision days with a lot of the companies that I work with about 30 days into our relationship, and people throw crazy, wild numbers. And listen, I love like shooting for the moon, right? But at the same time, like, it's not attached to any reality.
Sure.
And it's like, next year we're going to make $50 million. I'm like, you made $100,000 this year, chill out, you know? And so, you can get behind visionaries like that have a really good, like, focused goal. But if there's no practicality behind it, you should definitely be wary, right? Yeah. And again, even if they do, they speak the language and they're like, hey, we're going here and this is how I see you in that, you know, and I'm going to bring you along with me or whatever it is as an employee. It's got to be tested, you know?
Do you feel like you're in a better spot as a consultant then?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I'm just supporting what the owner actually wants, right? Because especially with the financial side of things, is I don't touch operations anymore. It's like just financial services. And so we're budgeting, cash flowing, making sure they're paying their guys. They can afford to pay their guys at what rate, how much money should each person generate in revenue for the company? You know, what should their overhead be? What should their cash on hand goal be? How much money should they have at any given time? All of that stuff. So the financial side of it, we forecast into the future. But all of that boils down to what the owner is telling me in that moment that they actually want for this current period of time. Like, what is the goal for this year? Is it $250K? Is it, $2 million? Is it 10 million? Is it 100 million? And so we can talk about long-term goals and what our reinvestment strategy is going to look like with the excess cash when it's actually producing and it's profitable like it's supposed to be. And that's a part of what we do as well. We're going to take, okay, so we made X amount of dollars this year above and beyond paying you. What are we going to do with that excess money that shouldn't be in the bank because it's not doing anything in the bank? Let's reinvest it or take it as distributions as a business owner and put money in your pocket and go reinvest into other things in your own personal life, right? So what do we do with that money? But when it's there, you find out what the business owner really cares about. Like, how much of that is actually going to go back into reinvesting into the future of the company and how much of it's going to go into their pocket. And I have no judgment now. I don't care because it's not like I have a job at the end of the day and I'm not biased to the company growing drastically. I want that, but I want what the business owner wants now. Previously, as an employee of the company, I want the company to grow so that I can grow inside of it, right? And so if they're not growing anymore, I'm tired of it. I want to move on because they're like, we're good here,
Okay. That's interesting. So when you're an employee, you do focus, you have your personal goals being that you want it to grow because you get to create additional opportunities, possibly move up, make more money, all that kind of stuff. But now that you're doing this from the outside, you actually get to slightly be more objective in terms of what their goal is, how they want to get there. And if they get there, that's fine because it doesn't really have a negative impact on you if it stagnates.
And again, like, if they want it to grow, I have to help them do that. Like, that's my job. But if they just want to keep more of what they make, right, and increase their margins or make sure that their business model is profitable and they can actually reinvest some of that money or take more out of it and put it in their pocket. Maybe they want to grow by 50% or 20%, not 1,000%, right?
Sure.
So that they can get to a certain personal income level that they've always desired. Like you were saying, a lot of people start a business with a dollar amount in mind. I want to make $150,000, and then they make $150,000 and they realize it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I kept $6,000 of that.
Yeah, exactly.
What is this that I just signed up for?
For sure. And so they're like, okay, well, their goals are going to change along the way. But going back to the original conversation, it's not about opening a business. If you open a business with a mindset of making a certain dollar amount, you're going to get burned out really fast.
Yep.
And it's exhausting to chase that around. The only and the best way to build longevity in a business and I'm still only 4 years in, so it's easy for me to say this without actually having a lifetime of experience behind it, but I've done it with other companies as well, is focusing on the product and the service. It has to be product and service based, not marketing and sales based. Marketing and sales based companies, they come and go very quickly. On average, most of the time you see if somebody's very forward marketing and sales, if that's the service and the product, that's different. If you're a marketing company or a sales company that sells and markets for other people, a totally different.
Sure.
That's not what I'm talking about. Your service and your product has to provide at least 10x compared to what it costs. And if it doesn't, then you're not going to build a long-term company because it's not going to build brand around it, and you're not going to have a lifetime client.
Okay, so when you say that, you actually mean like companies where they'll go out and they'll sell and market kind of more than they really can do.
Absolutely.
So when it comes time for people to sign the contract, give them money, pay those invoices, and when that next invoice comes,
keep the client for very long.
Yeah.
When it's time to renew the contract, they're not going to because they didn't get the value that they were originally promised.
So that's where you get into the zone of having to constantly get new people. You're churning and burning. And there's really only so long that
it's
last.
Really exhausting because if you constantly, so if 100 clients makes you your monthly, what you want to hit, but you're constantly losing 20 clients a month, that means you have to constantly get 20 new clients every single month. Now, if I keep those clients for a long term and I focus on product and service and I retain those clients and maybe I only lose 5 a month, but I'm adding 20 I'm adding 15 clients every single month.
Yeah.
So most people are looking at the wrong. Now, both are important.
Sure.
You have to focus on both and you have to be good at both.
Sure.
But what I've found is if you take the slower route and focus on service and product, you're going to retain and make a more successful long-term business rather than just focusing on the sales and the marketing. And getting the new client is what every business owner is focused on, and it's the wrong thought process. It's got to be service and product based.
Okay.
And building a valuable product that keeps people coming back. And even if it's not a long-term service, it might be a shorter-term service, they're wildly more likely to refer you. Your brand and your name grows, which that multiplies. This is the difference. Like if you spend money to get a client, you always have to spend money to get a client. And that might not be a bad thing. Maybe your ROAS is, 10x. You put $1 in, you get $10 back. That's great. But you always have to spend $1. Now, if you have a great service and product, then your clients, that multiplies. You're a client, you turn into 3 clients. Those 3 clients turn into 9 clients. Those 9 turn into 18. You know what I mean? And so it multiplies much faster than spending money, and burning and churning and having to constantly sell. Now your sales team's got to be bigger. You got to pay bigger commissions. You got to pay for more leads every single time, and it's not fun to chase that around.
Well, it never ends.
Never ends. Yeah, it's not something. That's why I say that focusing on the front end of the business only is where most business owners, just like 70-80% of their energy goes into the front end.
What do you mean?
It goes into sales and marketing and getting the new client.
Yeah. And
they don't put any energy on the service and product or the financials of the company because they're like, there's $0 in my account right now. So I need to sell another client just to keep money in the account. But they never keep any of it because their product sucks.
Yeah. Well, and that's so part of what I ran into with the last thing that I was doing was people were finding it valuable, but not at the final price point that I made it. And also it was one of those things that was really difficult to prove like a return on, like that was one of the toughest things. And for me, I'm very much try to be as transparent as possible. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, if I don't know, like if I can't prove that this will give you this, I'm a person that has a really tough time being like, yeah, it will do that. Yeah. And even if it does do that, like if I can't prove it or if I don't have like solid facts to back it up, I have a tough time like selling that to people. Yeah.
A lot of people don't is the problem, but you have a moral compass that says I can't do this without proving, like putting my money where my mouth is. You know?
Well, and I knew that it worked and I'd seen it work. Yeah. But it was hard to explain to somebody, hey, you should spend $6,000 to do this. One, because if somebody else was going to do this, they would charge you that much for the content anyway. But I was like, trying to explain what would happen when you put this stuff out in the world. Like, yeah, I put a clip out and then, interviewed a guy, and then I met him randomly at somebody's house after the hurricane, ended up cleaning up a house with him, and then he introduced me to 2 other business owners. And it was like, how would you explain that as a return on investment? Somebody would be like, all right, well, thank you. It was really nice talking to you. Sure. I hope you have a good day. Podcast looks cool.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I haven't thought through that business model, but you're 100% right. You have to prove like a 10x multiplier on it for it to be, have any longevity and be able to continue to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. And that's where I was like, you know what? Let me just kind of put this on hold and find something else. And now it's cool with this that we're selling is like people are pumped about it, dude. It's pretty sweet because we'll get yacht captains, yacht managers on they're skeptical about it. They're doing a lot of stuff like spreadsheets, paper, all this stuff. And then you're like, yeah, you can put this all in one system. The guy's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is sick. Like, we have people signing up pretty much on the spot. And then they're like, all right, I'm going to talk to these 3 people about this, and like word of mouth on that front.
Yeah.
That's
pretty cool.
It is cool to have that. Like, now that I'm selling something where it's like, that's the response.
It's a good service. It's a good product that you're selling.
Like, hell yeah. It gets me pumped.
Yeah. It's why I niched out with what I do even right now. My price point was probably 5 times what it is right now previously. Okay. So I decreased my price point drastically, but multiplied my value.
Why did you do that?
Because I realized that my real value add is the financial side of things. If I can increase your net profit by 10% and you make $100,000 a year, it's $10,000, or sorry, $100,000 a month. It increases you by $10,000 every single month, and I charge you $1,500. You're more than happy to give it to me again and again and forever.
Sure.
Whereas what I was telling you before with operational services, it's 6 to 12 months. It's my typical life cycle. Somewhere in the 2 or 3 year range. That's not as common. And our price point's about 5 times of what it currently is, like I said, but it doesn't create a lifelong relationship, that continues on.
Because it's so project based, and because you kind of hit those plateaus where you
fix their problems. You fix the problems that they were hired for. Now I'm not saying that that's not what we're doing as well with the financial services, but the price point in comparison to having that person in your back pocket all the time makes a lot of sense. And we take care of the bookkeeping side of it. You don't fire your bookkeeper. You keep them for a lifetime if they're good at what they do and they take care of you. We're a bookkeeper on steroids, or an accountant on steroids. It's what everybody wishes their accountant did for them with the financials and the budgeting side of their company.
Okay.
But they don't. Accountants focus on your taxes, not running your business. But yeah, man, it's just like, I was like, how do I need something that I can 10x my value. Whatever I charge, it needs to be worth at least 10 times that. And then I know I can build a business around that. And I couldn't confidently say that about my previous services.
Okay.
Now, in the short term, I could, but I couldn't prove it, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't prove it on paper.
And did you feel like
long term it did?
Do you feel like it was hard because it was such an in-depth service across like so many things, that it was also hard to get people to see where they would land, like what the transformation would be?
Yeah. They're like, what am I getting here?
Yeah.
What's the end result? Because at the end of the day, you need to save people money, make people money, or give people their time back. It's one or the other, right?
And with something like that, it is a big time commitment from them.
It's a huge time commitment.
Yeah.
Now it's not, so it's decreased their time, decreased our time drastically as well, but multiplied the value, right? So again, decreasing the cost, but the value is multiplied.
Why? What brought you to the conclusion that you needed to change this?
Yeah. My internal team, been telling me for years, and I just wouldn't listen to them, unfortunately. Really? Yeah. They're like, listen, everybody keeps us around for this one specific service. And we would have kept a lot more clients if we were at a different price point and we didn't take as much of their time. You know what, I thought that people valued my time. And that was one of the biggest mistakes going from an employee to owning a business, is I value my time, right? But I thought other people valued my time. They don't. They value the result that I provide them, right? So I was like, the more time I get in front of them, the more time I give them of myself, the more they're going to pay me and the more value that I can provide. But that's not value.
Yeah.
Time does not equal value
to them.
It decreases my value. How much time it takes me to do something. If it takes me 5 times longer than my competition to do something, they're going to go with my competition every single time. Right. And so if I can get them a result, less of their energy and time in a much shorter period of time, they're going to hire me,
That's true. Yeah. Isn't it funny how people will tell you to do stuff and you're like, I don't think so. And then one day it's just like, you're just like, oh my God, I've got this. So you probably reached out to them like, all right, guys, I don't want to upset anybody, but I think I want to go a different direction with the company. And they're like, yeah, dude, this is what we've been telling you for. Yeah. How did that go?
Yeah, it's exactly what it was.
I've got this genius idea, guys.
We've been telling you for like 3 years now that's what we needed you to do. Even John Huffman, he's one of my really good friends. And, I went and talked to him about it. I was like, John, listen, I'm changing up everything that we do with Vanguard. He's like, yeah, I've been telling you that for a long time. What are you talking about? I've been waiting for you to do this. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Why, dude, what's wrong with us?
I don't know. It's our pride. It's what we were talking about a second ago, like what people think of us, and
yeah.
It gets in the way of everything, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, isn't it weird that you put so much emphasis on that? It's like, oh man, what are they going to think if we change? And then you realize like nobody actually cares.
Nobody's paying attention anyways. Nobody cares. They're thinking about themselves and their own lives,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how much energy we put in other people's opinions.
Dude, all the time. It gets easier as you get older though. And having kids definitely helps. Like once I had my daughter and it was probably 3 months in, once she was like at the 3-month mark, it finally actually sets in that you're a dad. Like you get past that like initial delirium.
I feel like it took me a bit longer. So my kids are 3 and 5 right now.
Yeah.
And as toddlers, then I like in public, I was like other parents or other people are judging how I raise my kids now, And so and now I'm like, I don't care. Like my kids are nuts and they're going to be nuts and they're freaking toddlers, And so I don't know. It's kind of funny. Yeah, you're right. As you get older, you just don't care as much.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess you see more stuff, but also like you kind of start to get a sense of what actually matters.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you're not as focused on yourself all the time. I still have the same thing. Like we went to the playground and there was like some birthday party going on and the playground in our community has like a section that's really tall. Mm-hmm. And my daughter's like a freaking daredevil. So she like just ran up there and my wife's like freaking out. Like you got to like get up there like ASAP. This thing is like 8 feet in the air. And she's like, I don't know. She's like 16 months old at the time.
Sure.
There's all these other like parents around and like, and there's like other kids on the thing. Yeah. So it's like the flip side of, all right, are they like, what is this guy letting his kid? Or why the hell is this guy up there on the playground with all these little kids?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in. But then it's the flip side. You're like, all right, well, I just got to make sure she doesn't break her neck. So I'm gonna jump up there and do what I got to do.
No doubt.
But it is weird.
Yeah.
And it's weird being around like other people's kids too. Like you got to respect it. But it's like, it's weird. It's
especially if they're interacting with your kid. Now I'm like, yo, don't mess with my kid. I'll kick a toddler in 2 seconds, But I don't know, man. It's definitely being a parent's a weird thing. It's very surreal most of the time,
right? Yeah, dude. I don't know. It's the most interesting thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
by far.
Yeah, it definitely changes perspective on life and what matters. I mean, what you're just saying, like all of this, as you get older, your perspective just begins to change. At least I would hope it does, And just thinking of those last minutes in life, like looking back of what really mattered, what we really did. And not to say people like when they say stuff like that, I feel like a lot of the time, like finances, money doesn't matter. I'm like, well, to a degree, we need to take care of what we got to take care of. And, whatever God put in our hands, we've got to take care of really well and steward well. And it's my responsibility, to take care of the people around me. But yeah, I don't know, man.
It's all part of it though. That's like the balance of life, right? It's like you do have to tend to all those things that are critical for your day to day, for your like success in life. Because yeah, I do view it as like I've gotten better now at like, hey, is what I'm doing at 5 o'clock really all that important right now? Is it more important than me just going home now and at least spending the next 2 hours with my family while my daughter's asleep?
For sure.
I now can make that decision and be like, this is not that important. Even 4:30 or 4 o'clock. Some days you're like, I got nothing in the tank and I'm not going to get anything done right now. And if somebody calls, I can answer it while I'm driving home, or I can answer it later. Like that's where I'm now looking through that lens of, okay, I still need to provide, but in those smaller moments, it's like a case by case basis. Like, is this more important than being with my family and having that time together? No. All right, let me go do that.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation publicly is a really hard one to have because you don't want to flirt with the line of telling people and giving them an excuse to slack off and be lazy.
No, but that's the difference of what I'm finding is there's the people that preach both ends of that spectrum, but I don't think that it exists on them. It's not either. It's in the middle, and it's case by case, because if you're like, you got to live for like, make sure when you look back, you have all those moments with your kids. It's like,
how can I provide those moments?
Exactly. Like, how do I make sure they're safe? How do I make sure that all this stuff's taken care of? And half the time when you go back, they're like, if they're distracted and doing other things and you had something really important, your mind's going to be on the other important thing that you were supposed to do. You're not even going to be present, and you're just going to start a bad cycle that will probably in time take you further away from your kids. It'll force you to spend less time.
Those extremes are never good, obviously.
No.
Yeah. Life's a big balancing beam.
Oh my God.
Like, that's all it comes down to.
Yeah. And you're constantly like walking over, like you're like looking down.
Oh, crap. I'm over on this side too far. And my wife's letting me know right now, you know? So before we even jumped on, we were talking about that. And like, finally, after we just celebrated, like I said, 8 years of marriage, and finally in that like really good groove of marriage, which has been a fun season and time. But yeah, man, that balancing beam with each other and trying to figure out what's right for us is a difficult one. And it changes constantly throughout seasons of life.
All the time.
Know? It's like this season, I'm grinding it out. I'm working. And the next one, it's time to focus on my wife and my kids, you know? And I think that people are like, it's a constant perfect balance. Like, you work at these times and you don't work at these times. I'm like, no, there's times for everything, you know? It's reaping and harvesting at the end of the day. There's times to sow and there's times to reap, you know?
Do you feel like, how do you guys communicate? Are you like pretty open with each other about like what's going on?
Yeah, we have to be. I've found that even though, you know what, it's funny, as a man, I always thought like my wife didn't, like it was my job to not share the burden and the crap that's in life. And I don't care to share it. Like, I don't feel the need to, but she wants me to share it with her. She needs to like know what's going on. And so if we don't spend at least a few hours a week intentionally just talking about all the housekeeping stuff that's going on in our lives and just sharing, our relationship is like drastically damaged.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's like, it makes everything else harder to communicate.
Yeah. And with toddlers and kids in the house, I don't know yet, but I'm imagining and believing this is like the hardest chapter of life, you know, just because of how crazy and fast paced you have to be on 24/7 those kids. And at the same time, we're also like in that season professionally as well, like really growing and taking off. We're in that toddler stage of business right now. You know, I'm not fully hit that stride either. And so I've got screaming bells and kids running around in business life, it feels like. And so, managing that, taking a deep breath is really freaking important. I've been taking walks lately, which is new for me.
Is it?
Yeah. And just in the middle of the day, taking a 10-minute walk, getting out of my house office and just strolling down the street for a second, even if it's for 2 or 3 minutes. and it's been good for sure.
I'm going to try to not kill somebody today.
Yeah. I've just been like, it's work is work. It doesn't matter how much you love what you do, days, it's going to be work.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But I've been trying to be okay with that. I'm like, yeah, today's not going to be fun, but it doesn't need to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't have to enjoy every moment of everything that I do. And I think most people think that if they're not absolutely in love with their job or their work every day of the week, then it's not for them. Like, cool, jump to the next thing and see how that works out,
Well, and that's something that I've been getting better at, but like the understanding the time horizon for these things has been always a challenge for me, because it's like, oh man, this sucks for today or for this week. And in my head, I go like, I guess that's it. This just sucks. And it's not really a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And it makes me reset. Like I have to reset and restart whatever the machine was that I got going. Like sales, perfect examples. Like if you get the sales machine going, like all of these different things, you're calling these random people and somebody sends you an email, this lead comes out of nowhere, sick, awesome. And then this other random thing happens and you're like managing all these things, you got it moving. And then you get enough people that are like, no, fuck off, like get out of here. And then you're like, oh man, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of can come up with like excuses on like avoiding the work that is roundabout busy work that doesn't actually bring you closer to that goal.
Listen, if you're working your ass off and the numbers aren't changing, you're not doing anything different. You're not providing any value, and you're just spinning your wheels. Like what you're doing is not actually making a difference. And you need to reevaluate your time, which is a hard thing.
It's a hard realization. Yeah. And it sucks to come to after, like, it's nice as I get older, the cycles get much shorter. Yeah. Or like the time before you recognize what's happening gets a lot shorter. Like now I'm down to, generally speaking with work stuff, like down to a couple hours before I notice
rather than
it.
A couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm being a dumbass right now. This doesn't work. I should stop.
Yeah. I'm like, what am I doing right now? All right. Why don't we cut this shit out and why don't we make some calls? Like the first few, they're going to suck. Just be prepared to call these people. You're going to sound like an idiot.
Just get those out of the way.
Yeah, get them out of the way and keep moving forward. That's tough though.
Fail faster, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think even Alex Hormozy, I heard like a clip or something, him talking about it, but it's like, yeah, sometimes you just have to go into it and just get started. Like there's no like, all right, we're going to warm up into this. Like sometimes it's just, all right, you get in, just get started. And then that warms you up.
I mean, I'm an operations guy, like in financial, so I'm super analytical, which means I plan way too much. And I feel like the past couple of years that's shifted drastically. Like I built the plane and then flew the plane, but I tested the plane a million times before I even went to go and turn it on, Now I'm like definitely more the John Huffman and jump off the side of the mountain. We'll figure it out on the way down,
Yeah.
Because you don't know. You just don't until you get into it. Whatever it is, whether it's a new business, a new position, a new job, a new relationship, you don't know what you're getting into. And even hiring, firing, promoting people inside of a business is the same situation. I don't know you. You know what your interview was, Yeah. And I don't know what I'm getting into until I actually do it. And we start a relationship together and see if this works. And if it doesn't, let's fail faster and make a decision a lot quicker. And I mean, not to get on a random tangent, but so many business owners hold on to bad people. I mean, for way too long because they're afraid of, the pain of going and finding somebody else and all the energy and time that they put into that person. But yeah, I don't know, man.
You see that all the time?
All the time, yeah. Especially small businesses. The two big mistakes I see in small business owners, like the two really big ones when it comes to people, is not firing fast enough and not pricing right. Especially teams under 10, businesses under 10 price the work as if they're doing it themselves every time. so they can never afford to hire the person to go do the work.
Yeah.
Because if you book out, let's pretend that you're a contractor and you book 3 months of work out. You're like, okay, I got 3 months of work booked out. Now I can go hire a team to do that work. Well, you priced it wrong. If you priced it to do it yourself and you try to underbid everybody else to go get the work, you can't afford to pay the people that you just hired for the next 3 months because the work that you scheduled is not high enough to actually pay them. And most business owners don't actually know the cost of hiring somebody, which is really unfortunate because there's so much overhead that goes into it, and it's not just their wage. It's the time that it takes to train that individual on site, and there's just so much that goes into onboarding somebody. And it's a calculated risk to hire somebody. You need enough cash for 3 months to throw in the trash to go hire that person, because they might not work out. But that's why I say you need to fire faster. Well, like within 2 or 3 weeks, if you got the right people or not, it's time to let them go and hire the next person in line and hope that they work,
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think generally, I posted something about this last week, is it's not the employees that don't work, it's the leaders most of the time. And I think that we have a lot more bad leaders than we have bad employees. Expectations are not clear 99% of the time when hiring somebody. So you fail them before they ever even show up.
What do you see on that front? Like what's like typically a situation where somebody says, "Hey, we're expecting this," but it's not what
the problem is.
Want.
Yeah, the problem is most business owners don't clearly lay out what success looks like in a role.
But do they know what success
That's the
looks
problem.
like?
So they hire somebody not knowing. They're like, I want you to take on all of this pain that I have, right? Okay, well, what does that look like in dollars, in finished work, in production, in sales? I need to know exactly what winning looks like to you. And so before you hire somebody, you have to know that. Like, okay, if I put a guy in I have a company that is trash removal. And I know, now they know that each one of those trucks has to do $12,500 every single week with 2 guys in it to be profitable at a minimum. And if it doesn't produce that, they can't afford to pay those guys. And so now they know that going in, that's the expectation for every single one of those. Every single truck has to produce $50,000 a month, or else it doesn't make any sense for them. And so when we hire new people on, that expectation is very clear. It's one of the many expectations, but we simplify it. There's only 3 or 4 expectations that each one of these guys have. But if they're not clearly laid out, they don't know what winning and success looks like, and it frustrates both parties because most employees want their boss to like them, want their boss to think that they're doing a good job. They want to come to work and have somebody look at them like, man, you're killing it today. Not, you're here again, and I've got to deal with you again. And this is going to be a headache. Nobody enjoys that. And so because most employees are not crappy and don't want to just sit there and just collect a paycheck, and I don't think that's the norm. I think that most people assume that that's the norm because that's what they get out of most of their employees once they really exhaust their employees and their team. In the beginning, 3-6 months in with a new employee, a lot of the time they've got this spunk about them. They're really amped up. They're happy to be there. But as a leader, you've exhausted that individual because you're constantly telling them that they've failed and they're doing the wrong thing. But it's because they have no idea what winning and success and doing the right thing look like in the company.
And you don't necessarily know what it is, and you're not clearly communicating it.
Yeah, if you're not consistently communicating it over and over and over again, they're not going to hear. Even here's the other thing: if you just communicated on hiring day, you failed miserably as a leader. You can't do that because
nobody thinks of anything in a long term. You, even just for yourself, you constantly have to set reminders for yourself.
Who looks at a job description after they get hired? Nobody ever.
I don't even know that people look at the job description after the interview.
Yeah, exactly. And so while those documents, so many business owners ask us to come in and write their job descriptions and their processes and everything. Okay, that's the easy part. They think that's the work. And I'm like, that's not the work at all. Putting the budget down on paper one time is not the work. It's the consistency behind it. It's the consistently telling the employee the same exact stuff over and over again.
It's like exercising.
It absolutely is.
It's like, it's that same kind of feeling before you go like, all right, I got to open up the books again and look at this stuff. It's the same kind of feeling you get before you go start working out.
Yeah. Going to like mentally getting prepped to go to the gym sucks.
Yeah.
That's why most people don't go to the gym. Like the actual afterwards, you're really happy you did it, but it's not fun to like get prepped and go there and show up. It's just going through those same motions over and over.
And there's so many excuses that come up that you're like, oh man, it's raining out. I can't go.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing in business. Like so many of these guys are like, you don't understand how much I have on my plate. I'm like, I very much do. I get it. I totally understand what you're saying. But if you're not consistent with this stuff, it just never sticks. Implementation is cheap. Its consistency is expensive, and it's painful and it's difficult, but it's simple. It's simple consistency over a long period of time is what drives results. And without that, you're going to fail every single time. You're going to go through people like crazy, and it costs way too much money to go through people.
Yeah. Well, and if you're like, my mind goes all over the place. Like I'm the opposite of you. I'm like the very disorganized person, and I don't plan things.
Sure.
Very much beyond like real basic planning. But that consistency I'm noticing is like critical to building this momentum that helps move things forward in the right direction. Plus, one of the things that I dealt with on that front is if you don't have some sort of consistency, you end up going all these different directions that take you off the path, and they end up like killing any of that momentum. Yeah. So you like you just chase this like nothing burger over here. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm way out in left field, and the guy's running the bases right now. I have literally no chance of throwing him out at the plate because I don't even know where the ball is. Like
yeah, it's hitting on the head. Honestly, so the same exact thing that I'm saying business owners need to do with their employees is the reason that business owners hire me a lot of the time, because they want to be told what success looks like in their business. Like, what's the model in my business that works financially for the company to grow and move forward into the future? Now, tell me what I have to do this week. So when we meet on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, whatever it is, they're hiring me to tell them, like, this is my expectation so that you can succeed in what you've told me, right? You need to go produce $50,000 this week. Go do it. That's what they want to hear, so that they're not scatterbrained and all over the place, because it's what we all do.
Yeah.
You know, they get distracted and focus on stuff that doesn't actually move the needle. And
way easier to focus on that.
Yeah. Like, what do I need to do? Just tell me. I'm like, all right, here it is, you know?
What do you think that is, like, in terms of people want to be told that? Why?
Because it's really difficult to manage yourself. If you're the one in charge and you're the lead, I mean, yeah, it's the brain power is the hard work, right? It's the thinking behind all this. You don't want to deal with any of it. It's easy. Like, this is the big thing with contractors. They're really good at their trade. I would most of the time rather go out and do a trade and work with my hands that I've done a million times, and I know how to do it really well, right? If you've got to get into a different frame of mind that you're never in to run a business or lead in a way that you've never led, or look at finances or operations and process or software, whatever it is, you got to learn something new. It's uncomfortable. You got to fail at it a lot. You know, like, learning is not something a lot of people like to do, I don't think. And it's easier to take direction, which is why I think the consulting industry is where it's at right now, because people don't want to have to go out and learn it for themselves. They want somebody to just tell them how to do it.
What impact do you think that has on the, like, kind of the world at large, but like the business world at large?
I mean, there's a lot of crappy consultants out there, first of all, that, but they don't last long. So that's a good thing. Like, there's no longevity there, because you find out really quick. You get a bad name. And so, yeah, they'll get tired from constantly having to sell the next guy and not provide anything, so they won't stick around. But, I mean, it's human nature to want to be led. Like, we need to be led to some degree. You know, even business owners are led by something, someone, somebody's taught them somebody's teaching, and if they're not learning and they're not growing, then they're not moving forward.
Yeah.
They're not, the business isn't moving forward if they're not constantly growing. If you reach your lid, you're there, you know? And so you need somebody to come alongside of you and direct you to the next step.
How do people find leadership, like in life? Because this almost seems more on like a life level, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know, so we were talking before we started rolling. You said you're talking about Jesus a lot more, but so like on that side, let's dig into that, because that feels like there's a certain, I don't know the best way to ask this, but there feels like a certain side of being a human that you do need to like be connected to something that can lead you. And when you're out there on your own, trying to do it on your own, you can get lost really easily and go a bunch of different directions. I don't know. So from that perspective, do you like, is that one of the ways that like religion or following Jesus, like is that one of the areas that helps you? And does that question even make sense?
I'm going to try and answer it, I think.
Okay. This is how my brain works.
Yeah. They're just going to get it out there and we'll figure it out. Yeah, man. I mean, when it comes to leadership in my own life, with the people that I lead, the people that I'm under leadership from, you know, that lead me as well, friends, mentors, whoever it might be, my partners, I've learned the best leadership principles out of that book, out of the Bible, and I've found them to be wildly true. Yeah, man, I think that at the end of the day, purpose drives absolutely everything. The distraction that you're going to find as a leader, you have to know where you're heading, you know, or else like where's the roadmap here? Where are we, at least where's the destination that we're trying to get to, and what's the purpose behind all of this? And so you have to start with that, I think. I don't know how to answer the question all that well, but.
Well, it makes sense, because I used to be a little bit more kind of go wherever, do whatever, not much direction. And it works it does work okay when you're alone. And actually kind of led me to some of the most cool experiences in my life. Fortunately, in that path, I didn't go down like any severely dark roads or anything. It ultimately led me to like have cool experiences, see the world kind of from a bigger picture. So that was good. But once I had a girlfriend who's my now wife, got a family, got a house, all these things, like it is more important for me to have a direction in terms of where I'm going. Like it's like less acceptable, even to me personally, to not have that direction. And those time frames where I feel lost, I do truncate them now, because you're like, all right, well, you're fucking 30, dude. You got kids. Like, all right, time to like pull your big boy pants up.
Bro, we're all figuring it out though.
But we're all figuring it out. So like, so you mentioned other people that you talk to too. Like, how do you like work with other people to find a direction in your life? Like you said, there's people like ahead of you, you know what I'm saying? Like, but giving you guidance, like what is that like?
Let me back up a little bit. I think that, you know, the commandments are all summed up in the New Testament to love God and love people, love your neighbor, right? And I think that we have summing up our purpose in life is really easy, and when you look at it through this lens, I think it gives a lot of purpose and direction for just about anybody. One is sharing Jesus with the world is something I'm very passionate about, and I believe is what we're supposed to do, because he's legitimately changed everything about my life in so many ways. Who I am as a father, as a husband, what I was raised in compared to what I'm passing down generationally is something that I'm really passionate about as well. And man, the life that he's provided is insane, and the peace, the joy that comes with knowing him. But that's the love God part of it. And then loving your neighbor as yourself is, how do I add as much value as I possibly can to everybody that I come in contact with you, with my wife, with my kids, with my business partners, with the employees that I work with clients, with everybody around me. Like what am I what am I able to add value to in this world? Like the gifts that he's given me and putting inside of me, it's my job to steward them well and to use them to add value to everybody around me. And so that looks completely different for everybody. And finding out what that is, if you're good at something, just naturally good at it, and I really believe that everybody has some type of natural gift that God has put and placed inside of them, it's not for you. And when you're focused on, like we were talking about earlier, how much money can I make with this new business, or how much money can I make in this new position that I'm in, it's self-serving, and that dies out very fast. It has very little value to it because I don't need much to take care of myself, right? And so making $100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year, like it gets exhausting very quickly. But if you're focused, and I think it's just true in every sense, and it's why I believe in the Bible, because like its principles are true in every area of life, adding value in business. And like I was talking earlier, if you're product and service focused, not sales focused, just try and make another dollar, you're trying to actually add value to the people that you work with, there's longevity. And it's the same thing in life as people. To add value to the people around us, my relationships are going to be better because I'm adding value to the people that are around me. My relationship with my wife is better when I'm focused on adding value to her, not asking what she can do for me. It's the same thing with my kids. When I provide and I'm taking care of my kids and giving them the relational needs that they have with their father, my relationship, it comes back tenfold. But if I'm trying to take something from my wife and just use her or take something that I need, man, it drains her really quickly. And I don't get a whole lot from her if I'm constantly asking. And I think we all know what we're talking about here, right, as men. But like that goes into a lot of different things, even with business partner and people, you know, employees. You like I was saying earlier, you exhaust employees. Most leaders, most business owners exhaust their team really quickly rather than trying to serve their team and the employees and helping them grow in the position that they're in or in life in general. You don't get much out of them, you know, and it's very counterintuitive to give without trying to receive. But when you do, it always comes back tenfold. It just does. And so trying to add value to the people around you with whatever God gifted you with, I think is the purpose that we're here. And figuring that out as fast as you can comes with a lot of failure. Like fail as fast as you possibly can to figure out what that gift and value that you can provide to the world is. And the faster that you fail, the faster you're going to get there. The faster you're going to figure it out and just get over the failures, move on. Like, I know I sound like a broken record right now, but like fail faster, fail as quickly as you possibly can and be okay with it and not care what the people around you are going to think, what your family's going to think, right? What your friends are going to think. Because the people that really care, they're there, you know. This is the John Huffmans, I got Colin Einsman, I've got my business partners that are, you know, Vinny Dugan and Ron Early. Like they're incredible people that when I bring stuff to them, I know that they're going to take care of it. But it's because I add value to their lives as much as I possibly can at any given moment. And we all fail at that too, but trying. You know?
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole point. It's just like keep trying. But so you mentioned like it changed you. So what were you like before the change, and what was the change?
Yeah, I was a professional kickboxer in a past life, and been getting the crap beat out of me many times. My parents are incredible people. I was raised really well as a kid. My parents instilled great values in me. I wasn't raised in the church by any means. Weren't really believers. My whole family wasn't until actually very recently. And I was fighting and training at a gym. This is all I ever wanted to do. I was 19, just going into my professional career, and had a youth pastor that was starting to show up at the gym all the time and wouldn't leave us alone. And he was like, come to the church, come on, like, please come out. I'm like, you're a nut job, cool. Like, I don't believe in anything that you're talking about right now. And so he actually asked myself and my coach to come into the church on a Wednesday night with the youth and beat each other up in front of the kids as an illustration. And I was like, okay.
All right, I could get behind this.
So we went, and honestly, selfishly, I was like, well, I was working at the gym at the time as a trainer, and I was like, yeah, we're going to get all these high school students to come to the gym if we do it. So great, And I went that night, and I'm like, don't even remember what the message was, but I just kept showing up. I was like, there's something different about this place. It's not what I expected it to be. And I went on Sunday, and I kept going for months by myself as well, and finally gave my life to Jesus. But yeah, before that time period, I was chasing a lot of the crappy things in this world, which we still do at times, And I was arrested 5 times before I was 19 years old, and spent most of my high school life with an ankle monitor around my ankle and in jail.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I was on probation just about all of high school. About a year, had an ankle monitor on. I was in jail for around 20-something days total. Did a lot of stupid shit.
Really?
Yeah, and yeah, man, I just feel like when I met Jesus, when he met me, he just changed everything. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It was a slow burn, and I know that name is a very controversial one, and it makes people feel a certain type of way because there's a lot of stuff attached to it. But the church isn't Jesus, it's his bride, and it's important. It's how we get the message out, but it's full of people that are jacked up and selfish and do some pretty crappy things at times. But it's not always a great representation of who he is.
Do you feel like the kickboxing and going that route, was that a way to find purpose in life and find direction?
Yeah, and honestly, shortly after I became a believer, there's a lot that happened, but that's all I ever thought I wanted to do. And it's because everybody around me thought it was so cool. It was the only thing I was allowed to do because I was on probation. And so the only thing my probation officer allowed me to do at nights after my curfew was go to the gym. And I sucked at it. It was horrible for about 3 years at least. And all my friends beat the crap out of me. And one day it kind of just clicked and was like, yeah, I'm good at this. Yep. I don't think I really ever loved it, to be honest with you.
It was kind of filling a hole.
Yeah. And it took me 15 years to figure that out,
Yeah, well, you didn't, and I bet when you were going through that and then you find Jesus, it's not something that you go like, oh, of course. I don't think I ever, like,
no. Yeah,
you probably, did you know it the whole time, but you could never admit it to yourself kind of thing? Or you don't even think that was accessible to you? I
don't think I could even have that thought. Yeah. Like, I didn't know I don't think that I really understood I know joy and peace are such like broad, easily brushstroke, words, but I was just never at peace as a kid. Like even as a young man, like I never had that joy of I can take a deep breath and enjoy life and enjoy the moment that I'm living in right now. And so I thought that I had to do something to prove that or obtain something and reach for something and work really, really hard. That's where I got a lot of the discipline in my life. And, some incredible things came out of it. I am who I am today, in partly because of martial arts. But yeah, man, I think that I had an image of what success looked like in my head. And as I got older and as I met Jesus, I realized it was really empty. There wasn't a whole lot behind it. I lost my first son. He'd have been 8 by now, but at full term. So my wife had to deliver him, and he was 40 weeks. It was a pretty horrible time in life. But he'd have been 7 right now, actually. And I was still fighting professionally at the time, and I had my last fight right before that had happened, probably 2 months before, and it rearranged all of my priorities in life and really made me evaluate everything. And it was probably a 2-3 year period, and it wrecked my wife and I. Our marriage was in shambles for those 2 or 3 years. We were really close to getting divorced at the time, and just because we're in different places of healing through that and dealing with it. And she'd be angry one day and I'd be okay. And I'd be angry the next day and she'd be okay. And but through that time, it really made us prioritize and like reevaluate what mattered. And I'm like, I don't like fighting.
Yeah.
Like I was doing this for nothing just because of what I thought my family was going to see me as, or the world, or the way I thought I was going to see myself. I was like, this is not fun. It freaking sucks. I still do it as an enjoyment thing now because I think I've like sadistically like beat it into my head that it's fun, and just to make sure I still got it, you know. But yeah, man, it's not something I ever really, really loved, and I feel like getting into the church around people that knew God, I was like, man, there's just something so real and so, I don't know. I feel like I've obtained it now. You know, I've got what I need, and there's not much of a void there.
You feel like so going through that period with your first son, do you feel like having the church and the community and having like the faith and everything, that helped that process, or were you still in that process of kind of finding it too?
At the time, no. I was still really new in my faith at the time as well. Not new, but 3 or 4 years into, you know, being a believer. And if something else had happened similar, it probably would have crushed my faith and crushed my marriage. But now, at this point in time, I often think that if something devastating like that took place, you know, lost a child or my wife, is like my biggest fear at this point in life.
Same.
But if that happened, I don't think it would crush me anymore because of my faith and because of what I have a hope for after this. It would be painful and it would suck. And even like thinking about it right now is getting me in an emotional place because it's so real to me.
Yeah.
You know? And I think about it often, but I don't think it would affect me in the same way it did, even if the circumstances were worse, which I don't know how much worse it gets, but
yeah,
I don't think, because of my faith, I think that, I think I'd be all right. You know, I think that God would walk me through it, and I don't have a whole lot of hope in this place anyway, you know, in this world, and people. I do in the people around me, and I believe the best in the people around me. But at the end of the day, if they fail, they fail, and it's okay. That's not going to ruin me, you know. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail the people around me. I'm going to fail you at some point in life, you know, and my wife and my kids and the people that matter most to me. But we just move on again, just fail faster and move forward and not sit and dwell on the pain of it. And I think that's honestly, I had a really tough conversation with my dad yesterday. I was in the airport. It's kind of a funny topic. He called me up, and my dad's not a believer. And, so we have a lot of these conversations. My youngest brother's in rehab right now. Bad drug problem, a lot of other stuff that's taken place, and got him into an incredible rehab facility. My dad's angry, like he's hurt, and he's angry, financially taking a lot on because of it, and you know, the responsibility and his expectations of his kid, you know, have been kind of dropped, and that's painful and it's tough. And he called me up yesterday. He's like, Bryce, I don't think, like, he was giving me some concerns that he had with the rehab facility. And I was like, Dad, I got a different take on it, you know? And I think this is the reason why that they're approaching these situations like this. And I was like, Dad, you being angry with him isn't doing anything good for you or him at this point anymore. And I understand and I validate the anger and the pain that's coming along with this and your expectations as a father. I don't know it yet. My kids aren't at that place where they're screwing up that bad, you know, but I can understand it and I get it. But every time we show up, we're allowed to go there on, you know, the weekends and visit him. He's just angry. He's pissed off, and he you can tell, you know, and my brother can see it. I was like, but Daddy's a man now, and he doesn't need your anger. It's not going to help him at this point in life. And he comes from that old school military family. And again, I get it. Like, your punishment for him, though, in the form of anger is not helping him move forward. And I don't think it's the example that God gives us either, because it doesn't push us towards doing anything better. Especially like with drugs, they mask the pain of the disappointment of all the crap. It's what marijuana does. It does. It's what all the drugs out there, alcohol, all of it. And I'm not saying that those things don't have their place or whatever, it's a different topic for a different time. But I'm like, if all he ever gets from us is anger and pain, what do you think he's going to do when he leaves this place?
Just go do the same thing.
Right back to it,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, when you show up, he needs to see dad that loves him and is there for him and supports him, so that he knows that there's something more and there's hope out of this situation, not anger. And I think that the Bible shows the exact same example. There's, the prodigal son, when he screws up and leaves home and blows his inheritance, the father is sitting there, he pulls his robe up and he runs towards his son. And the son thinks that he's going to be disowned by his father when he gets back. And there's nothing but joy that he's returned, And I think that's the example that God has for us. And it's just, again, it's so true. It leads to something better. And all the crap that I've lived through my life, I saw grace and not punishment on the other side of this relationship with Jesus. And I realized that that's what made me want to be a different person, not the punishment that the world gave, or the punishment I gave myself. Yeah. And so talking to my dad about it, I'm like, he needs love from us. He needs grace from us, so that he can see that hope after this place,
And you can bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Dude, just from my sharing, I don't know, I grew up not as a believer. I still kind of wrestle with it. It could be from the religious side of things. I'm very skeptical, and I have a problem trusting authority and things like that.
For sure.
A bit of a prick, but on the with the one of the things that I've been trying to come to terms with is the concept of faith. And I don't know if it's because I'm holding on too tightly to do something, like I need to do it on my terms, or what it is. But as you're telling me this, logically, everything you're telling me, everything that I've seen, every result that I've seen, everything that's happened in my life, everybody that I've talked to that I respect and that I like, follows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But there's still a part of me that I'm like,
and it'll never go away.
I don't want to give into that. I don't know what that hesitation is, but I feel that hesitation pop up in other aspects of my life. And I don't know if it's I approach it as a problem that I'm trying to solve, and
sure.
I don't know. I don't even have a question from this, but it's more I have this hesitation of letting go and giving in and having faith. I think all of these things are happening. I even believe I believe in God. I believe that things happen, and that I talk to God. I have a communication with whatever God is. I have communication with it, and I know that things happen like this. And I even had a guy. I was at a podcast conference. I went there on 4 days' notice. Just had started my company. And I went to this conference in Nashville. And I'm sitting there eating food in this hotel place. And some guy just sits down. He's like, "Hey man, can I sit with you?" I'm like, "Sure." And he's like, "I don't know why, but God told me to come over here and talk to you and pray with you." I was like, okay. I'm not oh man, this fucking weirdo. I'm just all right, that's not my thing, but cool. You do you. And then he's his prayer was for me to have faith, and he's I really feel you are hesitant to let go and give into this faith. Oh, that's my prayer for you. That's what God's telling me. He wants you to know. I was Shit,
He didn't know you from Adam, so you could have been a full-on believer that, or not,
Yeah, I don't really like take it off that direction, but like, I don't know. Do you ever deal with that side? Like,
yeah, and if any believer tells you that they have 100%, like they're 1,000% positive that this is the truth, like you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. There's a difference between evidence and proof, right? And I think that the comment that I would return your thought with is that I haven't a ridiculous amount of evidence when I flip the switch, the light's going to turn on because I've done it a million times. And I know that every time I flip that switch, the lights turn on, right? I don't have proof that it's going to turn on though. When I flip the switch, it could be that it's shorted somewhere or somebody killed the breaker in the back. So I don't have proof right now when I go to that switch to flip it on, but I have a lot of evidence for it because I've seen so much of it. And what you're talking about when you read the Bible, and this is the reason that I believe in it, is that there's so much stacked up evidence that what it says is true, historical, and even a practicality to my own life. And that's what made me believe at the end of the day. And it's what took me so long because I'm a very practical individual, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you are as well. I'm like, I need a lot of evidence to believe that this is real because this is pretty wild.
I'm going to stop punching and kicking people in the face. I'm going to need some evidence.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. But like, you don't have proof for God. And if somebody says that they do, then they're full of it. I don't have proof. I have a lot of it, like a ton of evidence that this relationship that I have is real.
How do you work on like letting go? These are the three things so we listen to Andy Stanley seminars, and that's like our Sunday morning kind of routine now with the baby.
Yeah.
And so it's like surrendering your will like to God's will, and then 2 is like checking in with yourself like on a daily basis, just knowing where you're at mentally and kind of spiritually, emotionally. And then the 3rd is like living with open hands is what he calls it, but like not holding on to things and like not gripping so tightly. Those are kind of some of the things I've been working on. Like,
yeah, I mean, with what we were just talking about, like the difference between faith and evidence, like faith is the evidence of things unseen. That's what the biblical like definition is for it, right? And so I can't see it, but I have a lot of evidence that it's real, and so I have faith. Now there's another scripture that tells us that the way to build your faith is by hearing the word of God. And so getting into scripture will increase your faith because when you read it, you realize again, it's real and it's good and it's true. And when you listen to somebody that's preaching the gospel and they're really preaching the gospel as it's written, not as they're interpreting it. And I say things like that because so many people are hurt by the church, but it is God's purpose. It's the bride of Christ. And if you don't like my wife, I'm sorry, we're not going to have a good relationship, And so, but at the same time, like faith it increases as you hear the word of God. And so if you're not in the word of God, your faith decreases. It's just the way it is. And so those moments and times and seasons of life that you're not reading, you're not in it, you're not going to church, and you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. You don't have to go to church to believe, but man, it's really hard not to, to have a relationship with the husband without the wife. And it's God's, it's what he created to share the gospel and share himself with the world. And so, yeah, man, your faith dwindles because instead of looking in the word, you look at the world. And which one's speaking louder is the one that you're giving your attention to, right?
Well, and it's generally the world. And it's really easy to just get caught up in what's going on, too.
For sure. Yeah. It's way too easy. I mean, work, kids, wife, all of it, relationships outside of that. It's too easy to ignore, and put it to sleep, man. So you got to feed something. And whatever you feed is going to grow. If you don't want your faith to grow, then don't feed it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. One of the things I got to work on that you beautifully like kind of laid it out was the giving aspect. I don't think that I think that way enough. And I think of it when I do, sometimes from the wrong perspective.
Yeah.
Like from a perspective of doing good out of like worry versus doing good out of like goodness.
Because you're supposed to rather than because you just desire to, kind of, or
sometimes. Yeah. And it's not like I don't do anything good out of like goodness. Like I still do, but I don't know that that's the MO, you know?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say about that is like, we have to check our heart.
Yeah.
But just getting into the rhythm of it is the most important piece, because at the end of the day, we're not God. We're not unconditional lovers. You know, like we have strings attached.
Yeah.
Like all of us do. And it's crappy. But if I really search myself, like we're sitting down for a podcast right now because I think I'm going to get something out of it. Right.
Yeah.
And hopefully like I'm returning in some way value to you with your audience or whatever it is. But like there's conditions to everything that we do. But still, I think that stepping into that direction gets you closer to it, you know?
For sure. For sure.
So, while we need to watch our hearts and guard our hearts with things and the actions that we take, I don't think that we should beat ourselves up for the reasons that we do what we do, you know?
Yeah. And there's plenty of self-beat downs that go on.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all beat the crap out of ourselves. We compare, you know, we judge ourselves so harshly. It doesn't have a whole lot of value in it. You know?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And so, yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we're doing these. Let's keep doing these as we go through. Yeah. And we'll probably bring John in for one of these too.
Yeah.
And all right. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to touch on?
I don't think so, man. Just kind of jump in these and hang out, man. It's been good.
Hell yeah. Well, all right, yeah, we'll do these as we go. I know you're back and forth, but we'll make it work. And then where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so I live in Dallas now, and my Instagram handle is Bryce Lawrence FL. So I got to change that. But right now, you can find me on Instagram, Bryce Lawrence FL, and our website, discovervanguard.com. Other than that, you got to know somebody.
Sweet. All right, thanks for doing this, dude. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on, man. No doubt. It was good, bro.